Hey there, and welcome. So today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to follow a student through the entire German education system. From that very first day of school all the way to the frontiers of research, we'll break down the key moments and, more importantly, the specific German words that define them. You ready? Let's dive in. Just for a second, think back to that day, that mix of excitement and maybe a little bit of fear. It's a feeling we've all had, right? A universal starting line. Well, in Germany, that whole marathon of learning has its own unique path, and it's paved with its own very specific language. So, where does this whole thing kick off? Let's take a look at the very first words, the very first concepts that really shape a kid's entry into the German school system. You know, in Germany, starting school isn't just a big family milestone. It's actually the law. The second a child is formally enrolled, or as they say, eingeschult, their Schulpflicht kicks in. And that's a big deal. It's the mandatory school obligation, and it kicks off at least 9, sometimes 10 years of formal education. No escaping it. Okay, so once our student is in the classroom, their whole world starts to revolve around a few core ideas. You've got your subjects, das Fach, and in each one you have your lessons, their Unterricht. How you're doing is measured by grades, or die Note, and you're in there with all your classmates, your Mitschüler. And at the end of the year, it all gets wrapped up on your report card, das Zeugnis. These are really the basic building blocks of day-to-day school life. So where is all this actually happening? Well, for most kids in Germany, it's at die öffentliche Schule. That's your standard public, state-funded school. But you know, there is another option, die Privatschule, which is privately funded and often has a really specialized curriculum. The paths might look a little different, but they're both aiming for the exact same major milestone down the road. All right, so after years of navigating primary and secondary school, our student is now staring down their biggest challenge yet. I mean, this entire phase of their life pretty much boils down to one single, all-important examination. Ah, yes, the Abitur. This thing is so much more than just a final exam. It's basically a national rite of passage. The best way to think of it is like the master key to higher education in Germany. Seriously, your final grade on this one set of exams can decide which university doors swing wide open for you and which ones stay shut. The stakes, they are incredibly high. And yeah, with stakes that high, there are really only two ways it can go. The goal, obviously, is to pass the exam, or eine Prüfung bestehen. The flip side is to fail, by einer Prüfung durchfallen, which can mean repeating a whole year or having to find a completely different path. It's a moment that can literally change the entire course of a young person's life. So when all is said and done, it really comes down to this. The vast majority of students, thankfully, will die Schule abschließen. They'll finish, diploma in hand. A few might end up choosing to die Schule abbrechen, or drop out. But for our student, success. They've passed the Abitur and they are so ready for the next big chapter. And just like that, a whole new world opens up. With that Abitur in their pocket, our student steps onto a university campus and right into the exciting, sometimes complex, and, yeah, often confusing world of German higher ed. But, of course, just getting in is a whole process, with its own vocabulary. Okay, so first, you've got to choose your major, or ein Studienfach wählen. Once you've done that, you're officially an applicant, der Studienbewerber. Now, if your grades are good enough, you get accepted, or zugelassen werden. And the very last step is to formally enroll. That's sich immatrikulieren. The moment you do that, bam, you are officially a university student. But wait, for the really popular fields, we're talking medicine, law, that kind of stuff, there's this huge hurdle called the Numerus Clausus, or NC for short. Basically, it's a cap on how many students can get into a program. So if there are more applicants than there are spots, the university will only accept students whose Abitur grade is above a certain cutoff. What this means is your performance in high school directly dictates whether you can even get into these elite programs. Talk about pressure. Okay, so once you're in, you're suddenly surrounded by a whole new cast of characters. You'll be learning from your professor, who's called the Dozent. You'll be working on projects with your Kommilitone, and that's a special word just for a fellow university student, not a high school classmate. And you might get some help or guidance from a wissenschaftliche Hilfskraft, which is usually a senior student working as a teaching or research assistant. And the campus itself, it's like its own little world, with specific places for every part of student life. So your day might kick off in der Hörsaal, this huge lecture hall. For lunch, you'll probably grab a cheap subsidized meal at die Mensa, the student cafeteria. A lot of students live on campus in das Studentenwohnheim, the student dorms. And for all the official stuff, we're talking exams, credits, all that paperwork, you'll have to brave the bureaucracy of das Prüfungsamt, the examinations office. Now, for a lot of people, getting that degree is the end of the road. But for others, it's just the beginning. It looks like our student has caught the research bug. They're making the leap from being a consumer of knowledge to becoming a creator of it. This is the path of a future academic right here. It all starts with a goal to promovieren, which means to earn a doctorate. And to get there, you have to write a massive original research paper called die Dissertation. Once you do that, you're transformed into a Nachwuchswissenschaftler, a young scientist or scholar, and your main job is now to conduct research, or as they say, Forschung betreiben. And that research? It follows a very specific, time-tested recipe. First, you formulate a hypothesis, eine Hypothese aufstellen. Next, you design and conduct an experiment to test that idea, ein Experiment durchführen. Then you have to analyze all the data you've collected, Daten auswerten, and from all that, you draw a conclusion, einen Schluss ziehen. This whole process, it's the very engine of discovery. So our student has made it. They've gone from a kid with a new school bag to a doctor with a dissertation. But is that it? Is the journey over? Well, the German concept of education would say, absolutely not. John Dewey once said, education is not preparation for life, education is life itself. And that whole idea is just perfectly captured by this wonderful German term, sich weiterbilden. It literally means to continue your education, to actively keep learning, to stay curious long after you've left the university halls. It's this powerful idea that learning isn't a phase, it's a lifelong pursuit. So there you have it. We followed our students all the way from their first day of school with a backpack to the very pinnacle of academia. We saw them get enrolled, we saw them conquer the Abitur, navigate the ins and outs of university, and even contribute to brand new research. But like we just found out, maybe graduation isn't an endpoint at all. Maybe it's just another transition. Because the real journey, the journey of learning, it never truly stops. Thanks so much for joining me. So my question for you is, what will you learn next?